Today I want to show you how to take something that looks like it might be hard to put together, which is to add a headings list, and show you how easy it is to do in Astro. Astro actually gives you a nice helper that gives you all these headings automatically slugified and ready for you to use. You ready? Let's jump in. Hey, what's up? My name is Chris and welcome to Coding in Public. All right, so I've started just with the basic blog template that you get with Astro. What I want to do is come into one of these posts and take the H2s and turn them into like a sidebar navigation. Thankfully, Astro gives us a helper here. You'll notice I'm in SSG mode and I'm returning for each of these nested routes, each of the blog posts, both the slug, which allows us to dynamically render the page, and also the post itself, which is the content. Now you'll notice I'm rendering everything with this content component, which is an Astro component factory. This is essentially giving me the HTML of my Markdown or MDX in this case. Now there are actually a couple of other things you get here with render, and that's what I want to explore next. So if I come inside here, you're going to see headings as another thing I get. Let's go ahead and just console log this. So I'll do that. And you can see with Console Ninja right here that I've got an array of items. I've got a depth that tells me how deep the actual slug is. So this would be like an H2 or an H1. And then it tells me what the text is and what the slug happens to be. So like paragraph or images or syntax or whatever. This is showing me for all the different posts I might have. Now in this case, this is the only one I have. So I should only have 3, right? 1, 2, 3. So let's go ahead and render these out down below. Now, in order to do this, I'm going to restructure this content just slightly. So let's go ahead and copy this just so we can replace it in a second. I'm going to have a wrapper around 2 things. First of all, I'm going to have a nav here with the class of Sidebar. And then secondly, I'm going to have my content. Now, just for clarity's sake, let's put it inside of a div called content, and I'll style this a little bit as well, and I'll drag my content back in there. So right now, nothing really changes because I haven't added any content here, but you can see that now I've got these sections. So what I want to do next is go ahead and add a little bit of styling. So let's come down here. And what I want to do is start with my wrapper class, and let's go ahead and add display of flex. I'm just going to add like a gap of 2 rem, and then we'll do flex wrap of wrap, and finally align items of flex start. Now I'm doing flex start, I'll show you here in a second, because what I want is on smaller screen sizes for it to be like this, where the sidebar navigation is up top, and then when I get to larger screen sizes, I want it to split next to each other. And in order for our scrolling to work properly, I need to just stay at the top so that I can actually get that sticky scroll. So we'll see that in a second here. Now, in order to actually see this on larger screen sizes, let's make sure this is big enough. And then I'm going to just add a media query inline here. That's one of the nice things about these nested abilities now in modern browsers is I can just say min width here of 768 pixels, something like that. And then inside here, I just want to change that flex wrap to no wrap. All right, just like that. Now you'll see there was an adjustment, and that's because I should have the sidebar in here right now. So if I were to come in here and add something like paragraph that says hi, you'll see that it now shows up next to it. Perfect. On this content itself, I just want to make sure that it stays kind of within its container, and probably the easiest way to do that is to add a content here with display of grid. Now let's go ahead and build out the sidebar. It should be noted that it may be that I don't have headings in a post. So if I come in here like third post, this has no headings. Or I might come inside here to like a Markdown style guide where I have a bunch of H2s, right? And H3s and H4s. I don't want to show every single heading. Now you might remember if I come back over here and console log this again, that I do actually have a depth property here that tells me the depth of the header, right? So what I want is just the H2s. So let's go ahead and just create a little helper here. We're going to say const valid headings. And here I'm just going to grab my headings.filter. And I just want to grab each heading. And I want to check on the heading depth. So I'll say heading.depth, and this needs to be equal to 2. So those are the only ones I'm interested in. And then also we need to account for the fact that some of them won't have them. So let's go ahead and just check to see if this thing has any length. Because it could have 0 length, which would mean there are no H2s, or it could have some length, right? Which means we've got some H2s. So let's go ahead and check the valid headings.length. We'll just say if it's greater than 0, then what I want to do is I want to render my nav. That should mean if I come over here and I click on third post, I do not get that. Whereas if I come over here, I should get it in high right there, right? So let's come back into using MDX. This will be our example one we use. Now that I know I've got valid headings, let's go ahead and do a couple of things. First of all, I want a small tag. The small tag will just say in this article. And then secondly, I want a UL. This UL is going to list off all the individual items. So we'll just take our valid headings and I'll map over each heading. And for each heading, we're just going to output a bit of HTML. So again, in one of these template blocks, let's go ahead and just take our headings, which are our valid headings right here, .map. And we'll say for each heading, all we want to do is output a little bit of HTML. So I'm going to take an li like this, and then I just want to point this to the actual href, right? So here, let's do a template literal string where I'm going to take my heading.slug, and then the actual text will be my heading.map. text. All right, and as soon as I save that, you'll notice I actually get them all showing up right here. And if I click on them, it should jump down to that section, right? And it actually adds it right here, which is perfect. So we've got the kind of core experience already set. That means all we've got is a little bit of styling. Now, I want to do a couple of things. I want to make this uppercase and bold, and then I want to remove some of the default styling for ULs here. And because I'm using a style tag in this component, in this page, this is all going to be scoped to this individual route or any routes that are at blog / whatever the post happens to be. So let's come over here, and I'm going to add a little section here for small, and then we'll also add a section for my sidebar. All right, so first of all, for the small tag, let's go ahead and just change a couple of things. We're going to add like 0.7 rem, something like that for the font size. Text transform will be uppercase, and then let's set the font weight to bold. Next, let's go ahead and grab the sidebar and make a couple of changes here too. I'm going to grab the padding here. We'll do a little bit of padding, 1.5 rem. Border radius, we'll do like 0.25 rem. Then I'll add a border here of 2 pixels, solid, and let's just pick a nice neutral color. And then I don't want it to shrink. I want it to always take up the full width it needs. So let's go ahead and set a flex shrink to 0. But I do actually want to set some kind of max width. So if I have a really long title, it doesn't like take up half the screen. So let's set something like max width of 250 pixels. Now we said we wanted this to be position sticky. That's kind of the whole point of the tutorial. So let's go ahead and add that. And whenever you set position sticky, what you're saying is, hey, when this gets somewhere in relation to me scrolling, I want you to do something. So you've got to actually give it some kind of direction. In this case, we're going to say when the top gets to 2 rem. So when it gets to 2 rem, I want you to stick to the top. And that's exactly what it will do. In fact, if we went longer than this and it came out of its parent, it would stay up top. Just to show you that, let's go ahead and open up my blog post, which I think is the little wrapper here. And let's see, let's go ahead and add something. Where's this at? The slot's right here. So let's add something else down here. So we're going to say like div, and this is going to have a style tag just inline here where we'll say the height is like 200 view height. All right, so now I've got this extra section. You'll notice that once I then kind of get out of the parent that this sticky item is in, it will no longer be there, right? It'll just stop scrolling. So I really like position sticky for things like this because it's nice and easy and contains itself to the parent container. All right, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so now we've got this here. The last thing I want to do is just set a little bit on that UL. So let's come over here. We're going to set the font size here to something like, I don't know, let's do like 0.9 rem. And then we'll have padding inline. We're going to take that away. That's the default, and I don't want it anymore. And then we'll take the list style to none. And just like that, now we've got this nice little scrollable container that always shows the links we've got. Now, just to make sure that our logic worked, let's jump back over here. If I come to this one with lots and lots of things in the article, you'll notice it's just showing the H2s like here, and eventually it would wrap if it gets over 250. Now, if I come over to one of these right here, like third post, you'll see it does not have that sidebar, which is perfect. That's what I want. And finally, let's go ahead and check that on mobile, it actually stays up top. So let's come over here. We'll create a mobile layout just to make sure that it's working properly. There you go. So it's actually staying to the top, which is perfect. Now you'll see the trouble is that now it's scrolling kind of behind everything else. So there are basically 2 ways to fix this. Number 1, I could change this to flex wrap reverse. Now, as you'll see, what this does is it puts it below the article when I'm on something like mobile. That takes care of it just nice and easy. The other thing I could do if I come back over here, let's change this back to wrap, is I can actually add on the sidebar itself some kind of background, right? So I could say background color would be something like white. And now you'll see it actually stays over the top of it. You probably also want to make sure this goes full width at this point as well. So I could say width 100%. Since I've got this max width on here, this is going to throw me off. So one thing I might want to do is come and steal this right here. We'll just add a media query where we move this max width down here so that it's only on larger screen sizes that it takes up just that amount. Now notice because this is a position sticky, it takes it kind of out of the flow of the document, which means it's now 100% of the actual document itself, where I really want it to be 100% of its parent. Okay, just come over here and calc 100% minus 3 rem. Now I've got padding of 1.5 rem on either side, and that's essentially what's pushing it out the sides. So I can just say calc 100% minus 3 rem. And if you wanted to, you could even throw this into a variable, and that way if you change this, it automatically changes this down here. All right, so that's how to create this little sidebar navigation, whether you want it on top like that, which I'll leave to you for a design decision, or wrapped down below, that's up to you. But Astro makes this super easy by automatically grabbing and slugifying all the headings in your document. I hope you enjoyed that brief tutorial. You may have noticed I use something called Console Ninja throughout the tutorial. That's actually one of the things you can win if you give just $5 to a cancer research hospital that I'm doing fundraising for in the month of September. There's links in the description to tell you a little bit more about it, but I'd love to have you join me raising money for children's cancer research. Thanks so much. I'll catch you in the next one. Happy coding.